Dear friend.
No, I cannot show my
problem.
PPT.
No.
Maybe you may show. Newest was sent right now. Please download newest one.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay.
So you can use my PPT camera or my PPT. You may change it by yourself.
Okay. Okay. So we will start now. We are going live. This is being recorded. And
okay.
My friends, I am very happy to welcome my guests today from all over the world. I am very happy to welcome friends from almost all continents across the globe. But before I begin, I would like to give a disclaimer. We are on a secure platform. We will be observing all norms as advised by Ministry of Home Affairs to conduct Zoom meetings. And as a restriction, we would request everybody to kindly keep their videos and audios off while we are in the IIF webinar workshop on faculty development program on how to research and publish in refereed high impact factor journals, which are indexed by prominent agencies like SCOPUS, ABDC, SSCI, Web of Sciences, JEL, Cabbels, UGC, Academy of Sciences, and others worldwide. I have with me a large number of guests, and before I introduce them to all of you, I would request another outliner as a disclaimer that the views which are going to be presented are individual views based on the expertise and knowledge each of my experts and guests have gained over time, being editors and experts. These are not to be represented as views of the nation or of the countries they represent or of the institutions they represent. Neither are the views to be expressed as views of the Indian Institute of Finance per se. I welcome you to the IIF webinar, and I'm very happy to tell you that we have hosted over 74 webinars in the last 50 days. While we have been online, 95%, 99% of them have all been free of cost for people to learn from and learn and engage with. And we have had some technical sessions which have been paid, but rest of it has been all free. I have with me today my most honored guest, our guest of honor, Dr. BP Singh Sahab. Dr. BP Singh is an IAS officer. He was the 14th governor. He's the 14th governor of Sikkim. He was the governor of Sikkim, and he's been Secretary Home between 1995 to 1997 for Government of India, looking after strategic affairs and departments. He has been an executive director and ambassador for India at the World Bank between 1999 to 2002. I'm very happy to welcome Namaskar, sir. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to welcome you here. He is like my godfather. He has taken care of me. He has trained me. I have learned so much from him. And I keep learning whenever I get to meet him, speak with him, and discuss with him. So it's an honor and a pleasure to welcome Dr. BP Singh Sahab. I would like to introduce the other guests as well before we begin so that we can have them speak one after the other. Then after that, in terms of the editorial address, I have with me Professor Dr. J.D. Agarwal, who is the Chairman and Distinguished Professor of Finance at the Indian Institute of Finance. He is also the Editor-in-Chief of Finance India, the Quarterly Journal of Finance, published by Indian Institute of Finance. We also have with us Professor Dr. Kashi Balachandran. He is Professor Emeritus of Accounting from the New York University Stern School of Business. He is currently based in India and Chennai, but has been a professor and is still holding his position as Professor Emeritus there. He is the founder editor of the Journal of Accounting, Auditing and Finance, which is considered to be amongst the top 3 journals in accounting and auditing around the world. We are very happy to welcome Bala again with us here. Bala has also been at various positions he's been executive director of the newly formed Gokul University in India. He has been a distinguished institute professor with the GD Goenka World Institute and has developed China-Italy internship programs, Taiwan-Italy internship programs, and various other programs around the world where he has been deliberating and discussing and talking on various issues and expertise large number of people. We have with us Lynn Martin, a very old friend of mine again. All of them I have known for over 25 years now. Lynn Martin is a professor of innovation and entrepreneurship at the Anglia Ruskin University, Cambridge. She worked with the University of Birmingham when I met her long back. She is a fellow of the Institute of Small Business and Entrepreneurs. She is chair of the Global Economic Oversight Committee, UK, and the academic director 2010-16 of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. She has been someone who has promoted entrepreneurship and developed and built upon entrepreneurship for the last 20 years and has researched and done a large number of projects with EU and various other institutions. After Lynn Martin, I have Professor Dr. Junzo Watada. Professor Junzo Watada is from Japan. He is currently based in Malaysia at the University Technology Petronas, which is set up by the Petronas company, the oil-rich company in Malaysia called the UTP Malaysia. He is a professor of engineering sciences and he's done work on fuzzy programming and fuzzy code programming. I've also known him for over 20 years now. He's a research professor at the Xinjiang Gongshang University of China. He's Professor Emeritus Invited Research at Waseda University and Executive Chair of the ISME and WCI-ME Japan. He is also the President of the Forum of Interdisciplinary Mathematics in India and Principal Editor and Co-Editor and Associate Editor of various journals, which are both SSCI Index, Web of Sciences Index, SCOPUS and all like the IC Express Letters, Information Sciences, Journal of Systems and Control Engineering, International Journal of Innovative Computing, Information and Control, Fuzzy Optimization and Decision Making. And he is very much based out of Japan for a long time and currently, as I said, is based in Malaysia. I have also Professor Dr. Giovanni. Giovanni has been Distinguished Service Chair Professor at the Swiss Finance Institute and the University Cerveza Italia in Switzerland. He's been past advisory editor of the Journal of Banking and Finance, one of the top journals in the area of banking and finance, based out of Europe. It was based out of Italy before. And he's also associate editor of the Journal of Derivatives, Global Finance, European Financial Management, and the European Journal of Finance, brought out of the US and Europe. After that, I have Professor Dr. M. Banu Durkan from Turkey. She is a full professor of finance and acting chair of the Durkan İlham University, Izmir in Turkey. She's a member of the Senate of the Faculty of Business at the university in Turkey. She's an affiliate professor of, again, I can't pronounce the name, I will pardon if I pronounce it, of the Ljubljana University in Slovenia. And she is a former co-editor of the Journal of Durkan İlham Faculty of Business, Turkey, and former guest editor of the Managerial Finance Emerald published journal from the UK. I have also with me Professor Dr. Valentin Emilia. I would request Valentin to kindly switch on her video. I see that she is not switched on her video even now. I would request her to kindly switch on her video. Valentin is a full professor of the Department of Automation and Applied Software, Faculty of Engineering at the Orevelix University in Arad in Romania. And she is an engineering scientist. And she is at the IEEE invited by almost all over India. Every month I see her addressing some forum or the other all over India. She is, I think, one of the most famous professors in India. Even I think she's more famous in India than in Romania in engineering sciences. And she also works on fuzzy and stochastic and engineering sciences and automation and applied softwares. I'm very happy that she has attended her children also involved in academics and in the scientific field. Professor Bharat Sarath would not be able to join us. He was Professor of Accounting and Information Scientists at Rutgers University, Editor-in-Chief of Journal of Accounting and Auditing and Finance, followed by Bala. I have Sadar. Sadar should be joining us soon as well. We are trying to get in touch with him again. He is a professor at Victoria University, Institute of Sustainable Industries and Livable Cities in Australia. And then I have at last Professor Dr. Yamini Agarwal, who is Professor and Director, IIF Business School at Abdul Kalam Technical University, Dean Research at the Indian Institute of Finance, and Associate Editor of Finance India, the Quarterly Journal of Finance published by Indian Institute of Finance. I'm very happy to welcome all my guests and speakers. Namaskar, and such a pleasure to welcome you all. I would now, before I begin, I would like to say that it's such a pleasure and honor to build you all. We have had over 700 plus registrations in last 30 hours after we opened up the conference, and we have representatives from about 17 nations present in our participants as of today. Most of them who are heads of departments, professors, rectors, and so on and so forth, who are attending the webinar today. We do have some people from the corporate world as well. I welcome all of them and the people from media and press who have joined us. I would like to begin with Dr. VP Singh, who is our guest of honor and plenary speaker, the person who will open with his welcome remark. I have been specially enlightened by his thoughts, the kind of spiritual enlightenment he has given me, the blessings he has given me in the last 20 years, since I met him first being at the World Bank in Washington, D.C. way back in 2000-2001, while he was there as the executive director. And since then, it's been a blessing for me every year, every month, every second month I interact with him. I would like him to bless all of us with his words of wisdom. He has held many strategic positions and done great. He is a true soul of this country, India, and I will now pass the chains to Dr. VP Singh. Please, sir, we would look forward for your wisdoms of words.
Thank you, Professor Aman Agarwal, for your kind words. And I must say that under the visionary leadership of Dr. J.D. Agarwal, who is present in the conference, and yourself, the Indian Institute of Finance has emerged as a center of excellence, a base for scholarship and high quality, professionally oriented education, research and training. I also join you in welcoming your guests, who are really quite a galaxy of scholars and achievers. I see Dr. Kasi Balachandran, Professor Lynn Martin, Professor Junujo, Professor Gulwani, Professor Banu, Professor Valentin, and Sardar Islam, and of course, Yamini Agarwal. Let me begin my few words with one shloka of Rigved, which says, Anabhadra kartavo yantu vishwata. Let noble thoughts come to us from every side. This gathering I find consisting as it is of people from different parts of the world is in pursuance of this great ideal, which has guided India's scholarship, India's cultural pursuits for millennia. The question before me is how to research and publish. It is a vast subject and needs to be appreciated in local, regional, and global context. At the outset, we have to see it in the context of past, present day situation, and posterity as well. Books, monographs, articles have immense value in the life of not only the writer, but also his society and beyond. Some of the writings do not die. Some institutions like libraries, teaching centers, and scientific institutions play a big role. I must, for example, mention about certain civilizations which have been built by both verbal in the centuries gone by and later by published documents. And in this connection, if you look at the Indian, the Chinese, the Greek or the Western philosophy and Islamic philosophy, they have flourished through original contributions of scholars, sages and saints, scientists, and technology innovators. And all of them have got the idea in a state of their enlightened consciousness. And it is very difficult, therefore, to reach yourself to that position of enlightened consciousness. And in modern times, this requires research. This requires original thinking. For example, if we look at the past in India, the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita have contributed and made Indian civilization what it is. The working of similar situation, say in Greece, when we think of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, they have embellished the Western philosophy. I'm reminded of a question that was put to Plato by one of his disciples. He said, Plato, I think you will be remembered by your book, The Republic. But what would you like to be remembered for? He said, I would like to be remembered by the academia, the academy, which he had set up. I'm happy to be in this academia, addressing this conference of scholars and researchers and contributors to original ideas, and saying that this institution will have to take that ideal so that when we meet 100, we won't be there, but when we meet 100 years later, this institution is still contributing and building the society of today and tomorrow. While I'm talking about this institution, I am reminded of three things. One is the Library of Alexandria in Egypt, which before the commencement of the present era was burned for several days. I had a friend in the World Bank, Professor Aman Agarwal, mentioned about my association with the World Bank, and that was Professor Sarah Gildin. Professor Sarah Gildin, he was the vice president. He was a regular employee of the bank. One day he came to me and said that, look, he is going to leave the World Bank. I said, why? He said the president of Egypt has offered him the assignment to get the institution of Alexandria rebuilt. So Ismail went there, worked hard. He is the director of the library, and he has largely succeeded. We had a misfortune in our own country. Most of you have heard about Nalanda, which was the biggest university in this part of the world during the 5th to the 13th century. But it was Bakhtiyar Khilji's army which invaded, and they started burning the library. Something which many people, I have wondered why the libraries are burnt which contains of books. because people want to kill civilizations. It is some kind of hatred. But there is one man whom I admire for the simple reason that he was expelled from his country, Germany, to England. And he went to the British Museum Library and spent the remaining years of life from 1849 till he passed away in 1881, Karl Marx. And he gave to the world a new philosophy, economic, social, and political. And his two statements have always fascinated me. And when he says that to each according to his abilities, from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs. He made another great statement, and that is, he said that, look, the workers of the world unite, you have nothing to lose except your chains. Unfortunately, the workers have not united. And yet, that limited unity has achieved great things. I must now go back to the value of books in building not only civilization, but human consciousness and nationalist fervor. I became Culture Secretary of Government of India in 1995, before becoming Union Home Secretary. At that time, my Prime Minister was P.V. Narasimha Rao, very erudite person. He called me and said that we have to celebrate the age of India's culture in Russia. That was slated for next year, 1996. P.V. Narasimha Rao had elections to face. He was very hopeful that he will come back. So I went there. And he told me one thing. Again, I had gone out of his room. I was again called back. He said, I give you another task. And that is to find out, are the Russians going to come back as a global power? Because Russia was, the Soviet Union was dissolved in 1991. And Boris Yeltsin was elected as the first president of Russia. Then he told me with he used to smile very rarely with a sarcastic smile or something. He said, but I don't want diplomats' opinion. I have enough of them. So I went there, went round. I had a meeting because Boris Yeltsin could not come. So he invited, but in the meanwhile, government had changed in India. We had Deve Gowda, because he didn't get elected. But I went there with Mr. Sar Bomai, my minister. Mr. Sar Bomai was the leader of the team. So we were asked to call on the president because he was ill. So we were taken to his room. He was really ill. He was under oxygen and all that, but they removed it for a while and he said, I can't come, but I'm sending. And I saw there Vladimir Putin. He was then an intelligence officer. Now he has been president of Russia for a number of years and a great leader. So I was free after my functions were over. Next day I went to the shopping malls. I told my officer from the embassy. And he took me to, I said, I want to see a bookshop. There's a bookshop in front of a huge ground in Moscow. And they had Gandhi's a statue also, one of the statues in that Maidan, that ground, public ground. So when I went to that bookshop, boys and girls were purchasing books. And I saw to my surprise, they were not there and Mr. Agrawal should not, Professor Agrawal should not be happy in the business section more, they were more in classics. So I said, what is happening? I thought that technology and economics was much better. And they were buying books. So I came, although I told my minister, but I went to Mr. Narasimha Rao because he had told me. I said, I have found out the answer. Russia will come back to power again. Because their youth are reading classics and narrated the whole thing. What I'm trying to tell you that when you research and publish, you know that it is going to last, because that has to come out when you have an enlightened public consciousness. I must tell you one more thing before two more things before I close. I have written a number of books, but I'm not a trained economist or a sociologist but there's I always write. I have written 7 books, and I always write when there is an inner feeling. And I have a methodology, because that is a question of how to do research. What I do is that I have an idea which is based on my experience. And then I go and consult the available records. I also go and see the ground. And I also talk to people. And if your ideas, you find conformity with that, based on that, then the books get written. But of course, now universities have prescribed methods of research, how to go ahead. But I have done it that way. And I have found it immensely satisfying, because my books are surviving. And these are all based on that. At times I feel that I'm not writing a book. Somebody is asking me making me write the book. So that is based on that feeling. So I'm only leaving this thought with you. You are all senior people. Let me now end. We are going through COVID-19, and the end is not in sight. But one thing has happened, which is very clear to me, and that is that while science and technology have given us some kind of mastery over nature, it has also shown its limitations. And therefore, the understanding of the interconnectedness between nature and science needs to be balanced, keeping welfare of human beings in view. In another context of geopolitics and all that, which is also relevant to this, I found that the future tomorrow will not be dominated, geopolitics will not be dominated by one power or the other. It will be a kind of number of powers will play, number of ways of living will be respected. And if we start respecting that, because truth is one, but the truth has been interpreted, expressed in various contexts by various scholars like you and others in the past, in the present, and they will be done in the future. Therefore, we have to celebrate all points of view. And that's why I have written a book called Bahudha and the Post 9/11 World. If you respect another person's point of view, violence will cease. What is happening in the United States, what is happening elsewhere, what happened in other countries, we are not respecting everybody's point of view. And this is a conference which I know, in the true spirit of Bahudha approach, you are doing it, taking contrarian points of view and marching ahead. With these few words, I wish this conference a lot of knowledge dissemination and a lot of achievements. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's a great blessing. And I'm very happy you mentioned about Nalanda and Takshila, because They were the first two institutions in the world to be set up, 350 BCE, with about 2,000 scholars and about 10,000 students. Even today, if a university has 2,000 scholars, that is teachers, and about 10,000 students, it's considered to be a big university. And at a time when there was no movement of planes, no trains, no ships, in India, we had a university set up for spiritual growth, for religious, for other Rig Vedas and Gitas and other things to be taught. And people from all over the world, including China and others, used to come and study there. It is a blessing which we have. And thank you for reminding us. I'm also reminded of another Rig Veda quote which says, I will quote the English part, the ruler is respected in his country, the scholar everywhere. And that's why, sir, we bring before you and others these scholars from all over the world who bring a wealth of wisdom with them of over 45, 50 years of their research, of their contribution to the field of academics and research. Thank you, sir. We would be very happy if you stay with us, but if you want to leave in between, you're welcome to leave, but we would really love if you could spare some time and be with us as well for the conference. I will now go briefly brief you everybody about the program. We will request every of our speakers, all of our speakers, to speak for about 10 minutes, give their perspective on how to research and publish, because research is important. Many of us do research, many of us put things in perspective, but then the difficulty is that we do not really understand the nuances of research and what it needs to cater to and what it needs to do. And then in any case, publication of it is also an important component, specifically for younger research scholars. I will now go first to, I'm breaking the order. I'm going to go to Professor J.D. Agarwal in the last, but as being an in-house professor with us, so I thought we will take him in the last, but I would like to go to Bala, Kashi Balachandran, whom I have known, I have adhered, I have cherished his research inputs from all the time for over 20 years now, while I was there at Columbia and then later at the World Bank from New York. Bala, I would request you to kindly give your perspective of how to research and publish.
Thank you very much, Aman. It's such a pleasure to be participating in the Indian Institute of Finance, which has grown from inception to one of the best institutes noticeable in the world, and definitely in India is the #1 institute. And I visited you so many times, and I've always marveled at the work you do that was started by J.D. Agarwal. And thank you very much for inviting me to this. And I want to thank Dr. Singh for the inspirational speech to start this conference. To get into the conference, basically what we are trying to talk about is how do you publish in top journals? How do you do research and publish? I think when you look at it, you become a researcher first. And of course, you get your PhD or whatever and become a researcher. And then the next question is, how do you publish? See, you have one product. I always feel we are selling a product, we are building a product. The product is not an automobile or some air conditioner. It is yourself. You are the product. What is coming out of your mind and your thought process, that is a product that you're trying to sell. And you've got to really build it up so that it always has the highest quality. It's up to you to build it up. And I think you've got to put in all efforts to do that. So once you've become a researcher, the next stage is how do you publish? The first thing, of course, is look for a publishable topic. I meant publishable. You can think of all kinds of topics. You have to really focus on a publishable topic. Then it is followed by intense and deliberate attempt, deliberate effort, and a very focused research. And then once you've got the results, you've got to eloquently write it up for others to see. So you've got now the output of all that. With all that effort, you've got that. Then what happens? I would like to really divert a little bit and say there are 4 sets of players in this whole process of publishing. The people are editors, like we have here, gathered here, associate editors who help the editors, and liaison with referees who see your work and pass judgments on it and help you out, and then yourself as a researcher. What is the goal of an editor? The editor wants really the journal to be the top class journal. So the editor is always focused on inviting articles that will increase the validity, the quality of the journal, the prestige of the journal. So he is looking at articles that have the highest quality and will be read by the most people, will be cited by other researchers, and it'll come out with really excellent results that everybody wants to see. That's the role of the editor. The editor is always thinking about that. And he has got these associate editors who help him achieve this goal. The referees and authors interact, and I'll talk about the interaction very shortly. So what happens when you submit an article to the editor? Editor, of course, calls on an associate editor very likely, and then sends it to one or two referees. And as I said, the editor wants the highest quality. So if one of the referees finds it not acceptable, not of a good quality, the editor typically looks over it very carefully. And if there's concurrence from the associate editor, the matter is over. The editor sends a letter saying, please, you've got to work more on it. And you don't want to face that. You definitely don't want to face that. And we are going to talk about how you should not be facing, how you can facilitate not facing that kind of an end. So typically there are high rejection rates. You should not be, very top journals definitely reject about 8 or 9 out of 10 articles, because as I said, the only goal of the editor is to enhance the prestige of the journal as really the top journal. Okay, now what do you do as an author? What makes a publishable good paper? Let's see what makes a publishable. It's part of a research process, not just a random output of some kind of thought. It's a research process, and it's not an independent game. Don't take it as a game where you publish a set of articles and you're done and you can count the number. No, it is a research process. So you've got to focus on what interests you. You've got to be involved. I told you, you are the product. You've got to involve yourself so totally, and it has to interest you. Whatever topic you choose has to interest you, because you're going to be so immersed in that product, completely in that process. You can't publish in good journals if you don't read them. So you've got to first read the journals. If you focus on a journal and attempt a journal, you've got to read articles on the journal to see what kind of articles will they publish. That's one part of it. And then you focus yourself on your research and get the thing. Okay. Second thing you do is you have written up something. You have done a very, very solid research, and you feel you have eloquently written it up. Never send it to the journal right away. Never send a first draft to the journal, because there are so many loopholes. Even if you are a very, very senior author, please don't do that. And very, very often the journals reject the article because it's not eloquently written, because you have an answer for some kind of a question, and you've got to focus a question and say, what is a question? First of all, what is a question for which you have an answer? And will the readers understand your question first? That is something that you've got to talk about. Once you have focused a question and said, this is a question I'm going to talk about, and if you're sure that you've eloquently written up what the question is, and everybody the reader can understand the question, go to your answer. That is your process of research. You've done the research and go to that. So never send a first draft to a journal. So what do? You send your colleagues, you send your friends who are co-researchers, and ask them to read and comment on it. Essentially, you ask them, do you understand what the question is I'm posing? Do you understand what the solution I'm providing for that question? Is that a very valid argument that I'm providing as an answer? Do you understand all of that? And listen to all that. Give talks in your workshop, in your department. If you are a department, if you don't have a workshop, weekly workshop, develop one, be the leader, develop one, and present it there and listen to all their views on what it is. Sometimes there are senior authors, give it to them. You can give it to them. You can distribute the papers. And certainly that's a very good idea to do that, because they can all give ideas on how to improve the paper. Give talks in conferences. When you go to a conference, just don't give a 10-minute talk and get out. Talk with other authors who are in related areas. Give them your working papers, ask them to read and get back to you. This is what before you even send to a publisher. You may say, what, could it be plagiarized? No, actually, you know, when you distribute more, the chances are lesser it will be plagiarized, because a lot of people know that you've done the work. If a lot of people know, the referees also will know. When you send the article to a journal, when it goes to a referee, the referee will know, oh, I've heard that, that paper, I've seen that paper. So then you say, if somebody else has sent a similar work, the referee will say, I've seen it elsewhere. I've heard this guy talk about this in a conference. So you are also protecting your work by distributing it very, very widely, in contrast to keeping it to yourself and giving a surprise to the world community. So distribute it very well. Study the papers that are published in the journal, because you have now focusing on a journal, and Finance India, you're focusing on the journal. Read the articles to see what they will accept. Don't send it to a journal because it's number one. Send to a journal that really focuses on your kind of research, where you put your heart and soul and work very hard on it, and you've written it very well. Send to a journal that will really appreciate your type of research. And one thing I must warn you is, I know you have put in so much of work, many years of work on it, and you love your work, but don't fall in love with your work. That's the difference. If you fall in love with your work, you don't want anybody to touch it. You don't want anybody to comment on it. No, that's not what you want to do. You love your work, but you want to invite people to criticize your work and fine-tune your work. So allow for that process to go on. And that's very important. Essentially, you ask, as I said again, is your answer understandable? Is your answer related to the question you're posing? Is your question understandable? So these are the things you should do. And are you communicating very well? In a simplest term, don't put a lot of jargon right away, because if you put a lot of jargon, even the editor will get turned off and saying, well, this is just getting somewhere. I don't even understand what the guy is writing, what the researcher is writing. Write in simple terms what your question is and how you're going to answer it and what your answers are, and then go into the depth of how you're answering all that. And if you're, sometimes, you know, young authors take it out of thesis. Don't submit your thesis for publication. Journals don't publish theses. They are too long, and there's fatigue and boredom in presentation of theses. Sometimes you put in something because one of the committee members wants that in, so you put that in, put everything into that, and don't send it like that. The length is also too long. You've got to put it together and develop a paper on the lines that I suggested, the question and the answers to that. That's the way you should focus it. Do not write any paper chronologically. The thesis sometimes goes chronologically, chapter 1, chapter 2, but do not write it chronologically. Again, focus on how you're going to communicate the result. Maybe it's the last one that you observed is the first one that's going in. Very likely you're going to present your result right away at the beginning itself, so that the reader will know this is a very important question. It really interests me. And here is the result that they're going to do. They're going to talk about. That's very exciting. How are they going to prove it? And let's read it further on. Let's go on with it. And of course, it is not necessary to say, please avoid all errors. It annoys everybody. It annoys the referee, it annoys the editor, the associate editor. They don't want to go any further. Make sure, give it to your colleagues and weed out any kind of duplications and errors and all those papers. Just go through. If you have done statistical work, give it to a statistician and make sure that the statistical analysis is correct, appropriate, and so on. Or if anything more can be added, take that help. If you're a young faculty member, approach your seniors. Don't think they'll take away your work, and encourage them to read it. If necessary, if they can contribute something, don't hesitate to take them on as a co-author, because it helps. They know how to write, they know how to process for a particular journal. Sometimes you can learn from them. You need mentors on this, in this world of research, and don't hesitate to take mentors. You don't, just only single authorships is not going to work. You're going to be publishing a lot of papers. The only paper is not going to make everything for you. You're going to depend on many, many publications in future. So take the help of mentors. And if they have contributed something, don't hesitate to put their name. Don't put their name because it's a famous name. It'll get published and all that. That does not work. That is not the way it goes. So you send to a first round. It comes back. Why does it come back? Sometimes it comes back because the editor sees there's no hope in it, and it gets rejected right away. The editors would like to finish it off right then and not ask you to go further. But then there's a second round. How do you know there's a second round? Is it only when the editor says, I encourage you to write, to rewrite, resubmit? Not necessarily. If the editor does not say drop dead, don't drop dead. You have a life with the article. How do you know you have a life with the article? Give it to a senior author, senior colleague, and say, do I have life? What is the editor telling me? He is not explicitly asking me to resubmit. Now, what does it mean? Well, the editor has a way of saying, there's some problem here, some problem there. And if you feel you can attend to it, he's not going to say resubmit it. He's going to say, well, these are the problems. So the senior author can immediately say, well, you have an open ground. The door is not totally closed. So resurrect your life, get on with it and work on it again and do that. So don't give up. In the referee report, the referee writes very, very carefully. There are sometimes one or two referees. Maybe there's an associate editor report and there's an editor's letter, and you've got to answer each one of them. And don't think you can take a shortcut. You rewrite your work. Do not skip any of the points that they have addressed. If you think that point a referee has raised is not relevant, say so. Why? Say so. Justify it. Don't fight the referees. Don't fight anybody. We are not fighting. We are trying to be together. We are trying to be helpful to the author to publish a good article. That's why I said don't fall in love with your paper. Love your paper, but don't defend to their death. And take their views and answer every question that the referee, and write a memo to every referee, each referee, the associate editor, and write a memo to the editor saying, these are the issues you raised. I have answered it. I have answered it in such and such a page, such and such a line, and this is the way I have answered it. So write it very carefully. It takes time to answer all that. And it's very, very important for the referees and the editor to feel comfortable with what you have done. And that's a very, very important process. Do not delay it too much. Everybody has something else to do in life, so they'll forget you. So if you just send it after 6 months or 1 year, they say, well, what is this? Is it new one? What's going on here? I don't remember it. No, work on it fast. And that's your topmost priority. As I said, this is the product that's you, and you are interested in the product that's you. So build yourself up and don't take off your time. If you do get a rejection, then what do you do from a journal? What do you do? Many people say, okay, where is the next journal? I'll send it off next day. Don't do that. The pool of referees is small. I've had many occasions where the same article has been submitted to another journal and the referee says, oh my God, I just refereed it 2 weeks back. He ignored all my comments and I get the same one. What do I do? Go to another referee. The referee will say, please, I cannot referee this. You know what I tell the referee? No, you referee it. You send me the referee report. I want to see that referee report. And I want to send it to, give it to my associate editor again. And you cannot ignore it. It hurts the referee if you ignore the referee. And believe me, that is not the way to proceed. If you have got a rejection, attend to every referee report. You don't have to, you are not going to the same journal, so you do not have to write a memo, but make sure you have attended to every one of those comments of the referee and the associate editor and send it back again to another journal. Don't be afraid to publish. Don't go only for a journal A-type journal. I know that pushes you. Sometimes you have to go to a B-type journal. Sometimes if your work is behavioral, if your work is say environmental, for example, or something very specialized, you may want to go to a journal that is specialized in that and not to go to a top journal in that field because you happen to be in that field. No, in fact, the readers will not even read your article if you send to the top journal if they're not focused on that type of research. They will rather, the people who are working in that area would rather go to a journal which may be a B ranked, but that's where everybody is publishing. That's where you get your citations. So don't hesitate to do that and do it always like that. Don't go by journal ranking necessarily. Go by what is good for your article. As I said, you focus on that very well. How do you project yourself into the field? How do you build your product? Well, get a chance to be a referee. This is why I said I didn't want to talk about referee. Make yourself available as a referee. And when you go to conferences or write to the editor and say, I can be a good referee. I work on these areas. Please use me as a referee. So you get an article. Take it very, very seriously and referee the paper intensely as if you're writing a paper. So you see the important point is by refereeing it very, very well, you enhance your prestige, you build a product. I've had articles coming from somebody. I remember a person who refereed so beautifully 2 or 3 papers, so intelligently, the comments were so good. And I get a paper, I sent it to referees, one referee rejects it. I said, how is it possible? I mean, as an editor, typically I have to reject it, right? I'll just look at the topic and say, well, it shouldn't probably interest many people, I'll reject it. No, I'll not do that. I did not do that here. I said, no, there's something not right about this. So I spent my time reading the article. Then I invited an associate editor and said, read this article. I see some value in it. I know this person is very, very meticulous in writing it. So what I'm trying to say is invite to be a referee. If you go to a conference, meet the senior editors, ask them whether you can be a referee for the article, for the journal. And when you get one, please spend your time. How do you referee? Read all the literature in that area. Whatever paper you get, go through the bibliography that they are given, the references. Make sure you read many of those articles. Make sure you understand what they have talked about. Make sure you understand their question, their answers, as if it's your own paper. And then write very intelligently and not arrogantly, not insultingly, but write very carefully, very helpfully, because you don't want to get an insulting referee report the same way you treat the other author also. So this is the way you should do. I want to make one more comment here. Are there conflicts? Suppose you send a paper. This happened to me. I sent a paper, somebody submitted a paper, I accepted it in my journal, and subsequently that author had presented the paper somewhere, and another author whom I knew wrote to me right away and said, this is something I have done, and how come you are publishing this paper? So what do I do? This is a problem, right? And I talked to that complainant, to the person who complained. I said, have you published it? He said, no. I said, have you distributed the paper in many places? No, he had not really. And the referees, I asked the referees, are you familiar with this paper? Have you seen this paper? This paper seems to touch on the same topic. They said, no, they have not seen the paper. So I wrote to that person who complained saying, sorry, first come, first served. You're next in line. Maybe your paper will never get published, but that's the way of life. So you cannot sit on your research for long. And that is why I said, when you get your research, publicize your research. Publicize your research as much as possible. Give talks everywhere. Send your working paper to many, many people so that they know. If a referee had said that, I wrote one paper with another author, somewhere from Singapore, I think I remember. And I worked a lot also on the paper. We submitted to a top journal in accounting. The editor I know very, very well, very close friend of mine. The editor said he got a letter from somebody saying he heard that the paper is being considered here, and he was very upset because he had done a lot of work on that and it is being plagiarized. And he was also in the same team as the co-author, as my co-author. And what do I do? I wrote to my co-author and said, what is going on? The co-author dismissed it, saying, oh, he's just an assistant somewhere. But my friend, the editor of the top journal, called me up and said, Bala, keep away from this. He said, as a friend, I'm telling you, it is very hard for me to act on it with your name on it. I want you out. Please withdraw your name from this. I will act on it because this is sticky. You don't want this. So I withdrew my name on that. So you've got to be careful. If you suspect other people are working with you, please don't short circuit them. This is not a game like that. Don't short circuit them. I don't know whether he short circuited or not, but make sure you don't. You have their acceptance of everybody. And that's why I said, publicize your paper everywhere. If you are given the talk in your own department, that person would have said, hey, I also did all this work. What is this? You're putting your name alone. It's all joint work. Well, that's where it is, right? And then I want to touch upon just this one topic before I go. If you are in India, how do you publish in a foreign journal, in an American journal? I'll focus on American journal. You see, you focus on your strength. What is your strength? Your strength is Indian data, Indian environment. You understand that more than anybody else in America. Please understand that. You understand that. What is the strength of the American person? He, of course, knows the methodology maybe, but you also are very good in statistics, very likely, as good as anybody. But the other guy knows how to write. Maybe he's written half a dozen articles in American journals. He's read the journals more than you have. So what you do is you take up your data and then see whether you can, and look at the literature and see who are all working on it. See whether anybody could be a co-author. And if necessary, approach somebody like me or somebody on the panel and say, do you know the person? Do you think I can write to him? Or send the paper and say, you know, I'm looking at the Indian data for the same kind of work you have done with the American data, and I see the results are coming out different, and I know why it is coming out different, because I have an understanding of the Indian environment, and this and this control variables are all different in India. That's why it's coming out different. What do you think about it? You can write also as a single author. You can say, this is why it is different in India. If you find it difficult, don't hesitate to take a co-author because you have the advantage of knowing the Indian environment, the Indian data, and the good understanding of that, which the other person does not have. So I think these are all the ways you go about publishing top articles. And I wish you all, the listeners, participants, very good luck. And don't hesitate to contact me at any time. And you've got, of course, a set of fabulous editors. I mean, I always marvel at Aman, the way he gathers the group. And I know I have known him for 25, 30 years. Maybe I underestimated saying 25 years. It's probably more than that. I have known him from almost when he was a young man, but energetic and all full of ideas. When he first came and met me at NYU, we went for lunch, talked about it, and then the whole friendship blossomed forever. Thank you very much again for inviting me here. Good luck to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bal. Please do stay back because we have some questions at the end. I will now move to Lynn. Lynn, who has joined us from UK. We saw that accounting balance sheet come up from Bala, where he tried to balance out. So you can see the accounting part coming in. Now we have this dynamic young girl, Lynn, who is an entrepreneur, dynamic. You can see from her goggles and the beautiful gardens behind how dynamic she is, full of life. And she invited me to where Shakespeare was born in Birmingham to address a conference. And that was much after we met before here in India. And it was such a pleasure to visit where Shakespeare was born, to visit the town, to have an Indian meal in an Indian restaurant. And then going forward from there on, it's never turned back. And you can see that smile and the charm. So we are going to hear now the entrepreneurial person who has actually worked largely on Europe's entrepreneurial policy framework for over 20 years now. She has been working day and night, day in, various universities. She has set up PhD programs, doctoral programs. She's headed them and headed large number of projects, practical projects, what we are going to see. So I leave it now to Lynn to give her perspective of how to research and move forward in terms of publication. Lynn.
Well, a huge thank you, especially for inviting me to be part of such august company. So thank you for that. I've listened with great interest to our first two speakers, and they're really contrasting. We've got so much rich detail from the second speaker on the process and the role of editor. And from the first speaker, really the worth of publishing.
Just a second.
So I think I'll stress. First of all, the value, and secondly, the nature of journal publishing. So for me, the basic thing is you are a researcher. You have a passion for your subject. You have researched your topic and you're excited about it. The real problem is other people might not be. And that's part of the issue in choosing the right journal to target. Because you need to know who your audience is going to be and what sort of message they would welcome. For me, as an editor and as a peer reviewer, it's so sad to get articles which are perfectly fine in terms of the way they are written, but not appropriate for the journals that I'm involved with. There's no point sending an article to an entrepreneurship journal if it actually doesn't mention entrepreneurship in any form, for instance. So if you've got your topic and you've got your findings and you really want to publish, your first step, just as our second speaker said, is really to focus on which journal to target. Get to know the key journals in your field. Read them, see which ones publish the sort of papers that excite you, that are full of the values and the ideas that you share, because those are the ones to target. Also, if you've done qualitative research and the journal largely publishes quantitative, don't go there, because quite often they may publish one qualitative paper every 50 papers, but it's probably not going to be yours. You can't rely on that. Better to find an article, better to find a journal that already publishes qualitative stuff. Secondly, look at your topic. Has anything been published in this journal on that topic? If not, well, that may be a good opportunity but it may also be because the editor's not really interested in those sorts of things. So rather than waste your time, one good thing to do is to write a very polite and simple email to the editor and say, you know, I've always read your journal and I realize there are no papers on such and such a topic. And actually, I have a paper that I'm preparing for it. Is this something you'd be interested in for your journal? And the editor, you know, will give you a yes or no. You know, if he says, well, no, not really, then at least you know not to waste your time. If he says yes, then prepare your paper as well as you can and eventually send it. It's no guarantee of publishing, but at least it means that it won't be thrown out as soon as it crosses the editor's desk. The second thing is to look at the format required by the journal. Again, as an editor and as a reviewer, I often get papers that are the wrong length. You know, if a journal asks for papers of 7,500 words, they're not going to make an exception for your 12,000 word essay or for a 3,000 word opinion piece. You have to really look at things like that. Many journals also use sort of Manuscript Central or other online systems to process entries to their journal. And those have very strict requirements in terms of how many words in each bit and which, you know, what parts you have to put in. So before you get ready to submit it, go through the structure and the word count for each section. Because otherwise, as you try and put it into this system, you will find it is rejected. Okay, so those are just little pointers to shaping your paper to fit a journal. Again, if there have been papers already in there about your topic, don't pretend they don't exist. Work out whether you are contradicting them or you're adding to them or you're building on them. You know, this is a great way to actually start your paper and to start the persuasion of the editor to consider it. You know, so-and-so and so-and-so published on this and so-and-so built on it with that. But this paper takes a new approach in doing X or Y, is a way of sort of making it seem like it fits. And that always helps. It helps everyone's understanding of how you're trying to position it. So you've done all that, you've structured it well, you've sent it off, and we've had the process explained beautifully to us by the second speaker. So what do you do next? Well, it's a very sort of nerve-wracking thing, particularly when you first start, because you know, you've put a lot of your time and emotional effort into that paper, and it's always rather sad when they get rejected, or when they come back with all sorts of comments for revision, which you don't agree with. It's a difficult one. I mean, I have the good fortune to have 2 children, so I don't treat them as my baby or my offspring. I'm very practical about it. You know, this is a paper. I think it's okay. I've sent it off. If they said they'll publish if I'll do these things, well, fair enough. You know, actually, I'm grateful for any improvements, and let's get it improved and out there. And that's the way to try and approach it, I think. Assuming that all has gone well, what do you do then? Well, then you know, maybe your paper is published, and then you have to try and persuade people to read it. I mean, many papers are published. I wouldn't even like to estimate how many each year. You know, looking at Google Scholar and typing in a topic always brings you millions of hits. So how you can get people to read your article, because just getting it in print or online is not going to do it. Personally, I make great use of social media, and I usually have, it sounds very transactional, but I usually have an actual social media campaign for any of my publications. So I will prepare content across 3 or 4 themes, post it on LinkedIn and automatically link it into Twitter, and that will go out. You can schedule it ahead. That will go out once a week for 4 weeks. And then basically after that, I will target particular people to join in the debate on it. And that helps because, first of all, your paper gets read, but also, you know, you might actually get people to cite it, which is one of those silly things that are important if you're going to help your career. As to the type of journal to choose, it depends on the country, actually. In the UK, we have, for instance, a list of journals published by the Chartered Association of Business Schools, which are ranked, and they show you which are 4-star, which are the best ones, down to 1-star, which are okay, but you know, you try and aim for a 3 or a 4 if you can. If you're starting out and you want tenure in your post, or you're looking to publish, as the others have said, in the best places. That does vary from country to country and also across different topics. But if you don't know whether that's the case, then you need to talk to the professors in your institution to see whether there is a list you're unaware of, how journals are valued or ranked. Because when I was starting out, I sent papers to journals I read. I didn't know there were any difference. And that was silly, really, because it was a lot of effort for not very much result. So I'm a bit more discerning now in my efforts. Last point. You had an excellent sort of tip there in the last one about peer reviewing. I'd also suggest looking for special interest groups in your topic area. So in the last few that I've written, I really examined identity as a factor in entrepreneurship and innovation, and how different things affect that, and the work you have to put in to keep that identity, you know, valued and current. And so I link with 2 organizations, and the conferences are every year, and there's a special interest group around identity. And so those scholars are my go-to place for peer reviewing my papers. There are also places I find people will give me ideas and can be co-contributors, which is great. So I think that was a great tip. I'll finish off with value. We started off by me saying that, you know, you have to get other people excited about the paper. You have to get them excited about what excites you about a topic. So you need to work out what value it adds, either to a topic or a theory or a practical thing. You know, not only is it useful for theorists in identity but it's also a practical use because during COVID-19 leadership is under threat, etc., etc. So, you know, it's actually trying to articulate its value for different purposes and for different audiences. And I sincerely hope that will help.
Thank you, Lynn, for that insight with the beautiful chirping birds around, and that's.
Sorry.
That's nice, in fact. Do stay back. I don't want you to leave. I'm going to hang on.
No, but I will mute it so the birds don't get in the way.
Yes, sure. Please do mute. I will now move on to Junzo Watada, who is from Japan. I've already given the introduction on him, and I will start his presentation because he feels that, although in my opinion he speaks very well, he speaks perfect English. I've heard him. His students are today rectors of various universities all around the world, and he has a lot of knowledge. But then, since he feels that he wants text to be there when he speaks, I have him here. Junzo, please go ahead. Just say when and I'll slide on.
Thank you very much, the Professor Aman Agarwal. I'm quite happy to share the time with you. Can you share my computer? No?
No. I have
No.
switched a slide. Please go on. You tell me next slide and I will move on.
Okay. So I'm not sure I just which switch. Okay, I'm not sure so I give up I'm not sure then
so we are on the first slide. If you can move on to the next slide and so on.
Okay, please. I would like to change it. I cannot change it. Okay.
Sure.
So
yes.
Okay, I would like to talk about this topic for 10 minutes.
Yes.
It is not directing for the experienced scholars, only young students and just after the obtain a PhD. Experienced scholars know their own styles. I have several experiences in the past, so I'd like to share such experiences with other people. So I prepared a PowerPoint. You can ask Professor Amagalo to obtain this. So yeah, you can use this one.
Slide number 2. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, in your research. So in the past, in my young days, my advisory professor published one paper, not only a journal paper, but also one conference paper. Either way, not necessary to publish the paper in journal, but the influence from the United States. We should publish many papers now. In the past, in my young days, Japanese style is quite similar to European style. Very limited people in Europe publish so many papers, but again, United States influenced. So, but the customs. In the past, in Japan, many novel writers wrote various essays to live. But even today, in Europe, they do not write so many novels, just the one novel 2 or 3 years. They can live quite comfortably. So it is the same in my young days. Academic professors publish one paper per year. So, but today we should publish many papers. It is the same all over the world, not only Japan, but Europe and the United States and India. But India is quite similar to Japan. So we do not consider so much impact factor or the index of journals. But again, Japan, the academic societies are influenced such the style from Europe and the United States and Australia. So we should consider such way. So I talked this one, so why don't you return one page? Yeah, one more page. One more page. One more page. Yeah, I talk this where we should publish and how to publish the research. Of course, many people know what to work on, but I skipped this one. With whom to research and know our own position in the academia. It is quite important. You can find Google Scholar or something. So for example, Professor Zade has index around 20,000 index or something. Very famous person, the 10,000. No, or 100,000, sorry. 200,000, right? 100,000 famous. Even the 50,000 is quite good. In India, several people I met such people, but in Japan not so many. So in my case, 50,000, not so good. So you should know your position in the academia. So please next slide. Please next. So the media we publish, we know the various ones, conference poster, conference paper, journal paper, book chapter, edited book, monogram book. So we can select them. The most important is journal paper. Please next. Please next. And the journal has some index. SCOPUS, SCI, in social and humanity, SSCI. So we evaluate them using impact factor. So the SCI, SSCI has so many journals. So SCI Mergo or the separated or such a group into 4 and Q1 to Q4. So we should select them. Of course, there are many journals, so we can publish our result, but we should target the top journal. Otherwise, we cannot go or obtain a good result. Result is depending on the publication. It is quite influenced. In my experience, one scholar graduated at Waseda University, published the result from Science or Nature. Quite lucky, a very high impact factor, 40 or something. But it had some problem. Then this paper was rejected, depending on this influence on his PhD. Waseda rejected her PhD like that. So it is the similarity. So we have to consider this one. In my experience, we, including my student, submitted one paper to famous journal, IIF Transaction Neural Network. So the 7 reviewers accepted, but unfortunately, finally, principal editor rejected. Maybe I suppose the paper had a similarity. I used to require Waseda University to provide the authenticate, but they did not at that time. So our paper was rejected, unfortunately. So we should consider the similarity. And also the alumni alumna was removed her PhD degree. So the quite important. Please next. Would you next? Please go to next. So the when we write a paper, we may make a structure like this. A little bit different between engineering in my field and social and humanities science, but quite the many portions are similar. So the title is the most important. Title should include important portion, for example, the method and target. These should be included in the title. So I ask the student to write a good title. Otherwise, the paper will not be accepted. Also, abstract. Explain the whole structure. And we should remove the same expression in the whole paper, because the paper is not the long. We cannot use the same expression in the paper, not like that. Introduction and history, mathematics. Later, I'll explain that a little bit more. Please move to the next. And then if you are a student, you can use the paper checklist, this one, and comparing with your the paper. But this is for engineering or experimental engineering or methodological engineering, not for social science. I can explain social science, but a little bit time is tight, so I would like to move. You may obtain this one later. Please move to. So the how to research is quite important. Sometimes after obtaining a PhD degree, students do not work their research in PhD days, but I persuade them continue the research. Do not throw out the research or give it up. So the most important is continue, whole the life of the one topic. Of course, they can work on another topics, but do not throw the past research. It is quite important. Moving to the new topics is not a problem, but still continue the past research. Methodology can be applied to real problems, and in developing a methodology should compare with conventional method. But in social and humanities science, you should provide hypothesis and provide hypothesis test to show the correctness after the research. It is also important. Please next. Would you move to the next? And I skipped this one. You may collaborate with some famous person. It is easier to publish. Then move to the next. And again, we should know our own position. So you may check using Google Scholar. If you are experienced researcher after the PhD degree, you can know where you are. So it is quite important. So we should publish our research result from the top journal. Without the top, targeting the top journal, we cannot accumulate citation. So it is quite important. Also, without the submitting our paper to top journal, we cannot obtain a good review result. So good review result makes us our own paper heightened. So please next. So please check this PowerPoint. Quite short, but I think helpful. I may comment a little bit more later. Thank you.
Thank you. Junzo, we will come back on the question answer session, which is there, and
Okay.
we will take the questions at that time. So now
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll move to Giovanni, a great inspirer, a person who's worked in the area which I have worked on, derivatives, on financial markets, on various issues. And here I have him. Giovanni is based out of Switzerland. I think he's moved out. He's doing a derivative game here. Giovanni, can you hear me? Then we'll move to the next, then we will bring Giovanni back. Oh, he's here. Very well. I thought Giovanni was going to play a derivative game with me and disappear in between. Okay, go ahead, Giovanni. I've unmuted you. You can speak now. Just a second, I can't hear you. Yes, no.
All right, I think, is it
Perfect.
okay now?
Perfect.
Wonderful. So it is a pleasure to be with all the new friends. Today in Europe, we're still fighting this virus, so we sort of isolated. When I was asked to join this discussion, I thought first of recalling how I started 40 years ago, but I realized immediately that we are in a different world. 40 years ago, the main problem was the access to information, both in terms of previous research and data. These days, we have too much information. We have many more journals, and we have an infinity of working papers on the web through SSCI and other series. So the hard part to start for new people is to be able to sort all this information. So I share the concern of the previous speakers, but I'm not going to repeat them. I will try to give you more a guide to proceed in acquiring information and then using it conveniently. So the first step, I'll say, is to read the journals of the area, the reputable ones, in order to know what is the current state of the art in a certain area. After you do that, you may look at the web series, which have the advantage of being more timely. Often journals run 2-3 years late. But unfortunately, the web does not have quality control in most series. So you must have some clear ideas about what is considered to be relevant in a certain area before starting to consider writing a paper. After you study the literature from journals and from the web, you may start asking yourself questions. And at that point, it's very important that you find the questions you're asking yourself interesting and exciting. If you're not excited, it's very unlikely that editors or readers will be. So you better start looking for a different topic. If you find that it is an interesting topic to research, you should try to write some sort of logical outline about what kind of questions you like to ask and how you're going to research answers for your questions. And it's very useful to have a mentor. You may get a mentor starting possibly from graduate school with your advisor, but later you may have a senior co-author, which is probably very recommended when you are beginning, because it will save you a lot of aggravation if he can tell you what is the usual development of new ideas in your specialty. After you have this paper, you probably should let it rest for a few weeks. Why? Well, because the process of knowledge, of acquiring new knowledge, is not linear. So often I find that when I write the first time my new models, they are very cumbersome, and only after I let my mind think about other things for a few weeks, I find a way to simplify that. It's something that Merton Miller taught me when I was a student. He used to say, Giovanni, in your office, use whatever you like, but please then try to write it in English, which is not my native language, so that also was an additional challenge. Once you have the ready manuscript, it's very important that you circulate in conferences and possibly give seminars. The advantage of giving a seminar is that the attention of everybody is focused on you. In a large conference with parallel sessions where you have 20 minutes to present your ideas and then maybe somebody comments then for 5 minutes, clearly that is very sketchy. Becomes more relevant if you have a chance to have a discussion with other authors who work in similar areas. Otherwise, it's probably going to be a perfunctory exercise. So it's very important that when you submit a paper, you start by stating very clearly the questions you want to answer and how they relate to the existing literature. After you write that, you should try to write in a very clear way, the way you intend to proceed. Editors and especially readers' time is precious, so they are likely to dedicate much time to your paper, either find it obscure or not of great interest. It's also very important that you target the appropriate outlet. So probably you should look carefully at the kind of topics that a journal is publishing, and if in doubt, you ask the editor for advice about the suitability of your paper. After you do that, probably the referees and the editor will ask you to make some changes. At that point, you have to decide with your co-authors possibly whether the changes they request are reasonable or if they really are thinking very differently from what you had in mind. In the second case, maybe you get some inspiration for a new paper, but do not try to scratch too far away from your ideas. It's best sometimes to write a new paper instead of trying to transform a paper you have already written. Last point that I like to mention is plagiarism. Young people are always worried that their ideas will be plagiarized. I was like them. Then I discovered that most economists are very self-centered. They do not pay much attention to new ideas, especially from young people. So the risk is very limited as long as outright plagiarism is concerned. It is even more limited with the web series, because you can get immediately your papers in the appropriate SSRN series. And then, of course, if somebody plagiarizes it later, you can easily show that your paper was already posted on the web. What is much more dangerous, but not necessarily unethical, is close competition. That is, interesting ideas attract many researchers, sometimes independently, sometimes because they hear about the questions you're asking and they think they have better answers. Then, of course, editors often have a hard time deciding about priority. Most often than not, they take the paper which is better developed. And I think that that is reasonable. And sometimes, especially when I was young, I was very disappointed because some researchers with more experience will develop very similar topics better than me, but that helped me improve over time. So this time, very seldom I am I'm worried about these problems. So to synthesize, you need to be willing to persevere in your research, but only as long as you have exciting ideas to think about or to do the actual research on. If you find that something is only marginally interesting, probably you better stop it and start a new topic from scratch. Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sorry, we had a bit of a power problem, fixed it. Okay, so that's essentially what I wanted to say. Of course, we'll be able to discuss further if there are questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Giovanni. And if you have a problem, you know the place. Giovanni lives in Lugano. It's a beautiful place. I've been there, surrounded by hills and a small lake there, and a lot of serene and the art he talked about, and beautiful place. So you know where to go. It's like a Kashmir in Switzerland, and his center, his research center, is very active. You can always call upon him and go there, do research, and every researcher should know about this. Now I move to another friend and guest of mine, Bano, to speak on her perspective of what she has to say. Bano from Turkey, please go ahead.
Thank you. Is it possible to share my screen?
I will try, Bano, but just a second, please. Let me just try. I will make you the host, and then maybe then you can do. Let me just. Yes.
Thank you.
Please try.
Okay, let me see. Yes. Okay. So I guess everyone can see this.
Yes.
Hi, I would like to thank Aman, you and the Institute of Finance for making me a part of this international event and inviting me to be a part of this event. And I'm really honored to be here, and I'm really also myself educating myself, learning from what we are talking about. So I was listening what the previous speakers were talking about, so I will try not to repeat what's already been said. So basically I will, when I was asked to do a presentation for this workshop, I thought of the first class I usually have with our PhD students. In our PhD program, we have a course named as Dissemination of Information. Actually, we will be changing the name to Dissemination of Knowledge. Now, and the first thing I start with is what Aristotle said about the dual burden on the shoulders of scholars. And this is something we are very much familiar with. Aristotle says that scholars bear a dual burden on their shoulders. They must first of all understand their specific discipline, but just understanding it is not enough. We should be able to communicate it as well in a skillful way, so that what we know gives the fruits of our labor, and how we disseminate or how we communicate this knowledge is very important, and we have different venues for that. Of course, what we are focused on today, and that's what I will try to focus on, will be the written dissemination, basically publishing. But we also disseminate our knowledge through oral means, and also this professional meeting attendances, as the previous speaker said, also leads to academic articles and publishing. Now, publishing is very important all around the world, and we have this publish or perish saying, and we all know it by heart as academics. And when we look at this poem, which was published in Accounting, Auditing and Accountability Journal by Barbara Hullier from Saudi Arabia, we see that many of what she has written corresponds to what we all actually experience in all universities all around the world. So we have to publish so that we can get promotion, we are paid, we have tenure for our teaching hours, and we are forced by our universities to publish in SSCI journals or index journals. So this is really creating a lot of pressure on us. And when I think of publishing, I always ask the question, or I tell my students to ask the question, why do you publish? As Professor Giovanni said, I always say, work on a topic that makes you excited. Because if you're not excited of the topic that you're working on, then how will you be able to learn about it and communicate it to the audience? And to be able to do that, or to start the process, actually everyone nowadays, because of all this information overload, we have to be literate. That is, we have to improve our information literacy, which means that we have to know when and why we need information, where to find it, how to evaluate it, how to use it, and how to communicate it in an ethical way. So this basically requires different types of skills. Now we have this huge media, social media, all websites, publishers' websites, So we have to know how to deal with all this, how to search for information. We need critical thinking skills so that we can evaluate. And very importantly, we have to know about information ethics. So plagiarism, I will also mention, it's all mentioned, it's a very big problem, especially if you are, what we face is, okay, today we are talking about publishing in English, but also we publish in our national journals. And I think researchers should also be able to publish in their national journals, because you also have to communicate this information to the nation, to the people, if you think that it's worth for them, if it has a value. And what we realize is sometimes researchers find one article which inspires them, and then, or like they take certain articles and, okay, if it's in English, they paraphrase, they quote. But if they are basically translating, sometimes they translate word by word and then they just cite and they think that it's okay. Actually, what they're doing is they're translating the work of someone else and just putting it as an article. So that's why ethics and plagiarism is very important, and we have to be careful with it. So I think we also have to educate ourselves about the process, about ethics. So there are different types of plagiarism, and I will not go over them one by one, but we have to be aware that when we write an article, we shouldn't make these mistakes, you know. So usually what we see is like this potluck paper, people put things together and then, you know, they think they wrote a paper. And I sometimes tell my students, you made up a very nice puzzle, actually. You put all the pieces together, but there is nothing from you, nothing from your own voice. It's not yours, actually. You're just putting things together. So different types of plagiarism are there. So I think we should be aware of these, and we should, because sometimes we plagiarize without knowing. Like self-plagiarism is also another issue that we should be aware of. When I talk about this, sometimes people are saying self-plagiarism, but it's my work, you know, how come that I plagiarize myself? So all of these we have to be careful with, and we have to be aware. Now, when we write academically, of course, we have our own different ways of dealing with the situation. And sometimes it seems like we have the idea and it's very easy to put it down into words, but then we find out that actually it's not that easy. And really communicating our idea, we might have a very good idea, but how you communicate it and how you can sell it actually is very important. Because if the editor, if the referees, the reviewers do not understand what we are talking about, if we cannot communicate it properly, then there is a high probability that we will get rejected, or we will have to rework on our paper. So there are different ways of dealing with it, and you can be a pre-planner who are named as Mozartians, and revisers who are Beethovenians. So you may pre-plan and then write, or you may start writing and then you revise on the way. Now, when we are writing, of course, we also face some issues like writing blocks, procrastination. So these are also important. Most of the time, my students and my assistants or my younger colleagues ask me, like, how do I make it that like I write all the time, or I work on my research all the time, because we all get this writer blocks or procrastination. So I would suggest that if you are facing something like this, that you cannot write, then get yourself educated in this, how to overcome this, because nowadays there's loads of information on how to deal with this, the well-being of the researcher, how they can psychologically prepare themselves for the process, because the process is long and it really requires a lot of effort. And collaborative writing is another issue, like how do you collaborate, whose name comes first, how do you rank the names? Sometimes on the way you get problems. So all of these require you to educate yourself in this writing process as well. Yes, you should be an expert in your research area, but to be able to communicate the knowledge you accumulate, you have to be aware of this process as well. So I will not go into this, but the academic article has this basic structure of IMRAT, the introduction, methodology, results and conclusion and discussion. And I think when you write your paper, it's very important that you clearly state what your contribution is, which gap you want to fill in the literature, which requires proper knowledge in your area, and what are the implications. Just don't do research for the sake of doing research, because this is something that is questioned a lot recently. There are articles written on like, are you contributing to the research waste? Meaning that you write something, no one reads it, no impact, but yes, you publish, you get your promotion, you are just doing. And what I believe is, if you do not have if you don't yourself attach a real value to your research, then in some countries, also in Turkey, once you become a full professor, you stop doing research because it has no meaning for you. It was there for you to be promoted. So you were just sending these articles to different journals, collecting all these points for promotion or for getting raises. And then once you get your full professorship, then you have nowhere to go. And if the system doesn't require you, you stop doing research. So that's why I think it's very important that you yourself attach value to your research. So the publication process is already mentioned by the previous speakers. So I will not go into that, but what I would like to say is the peer review is very important, and please get the feedback constructively, like positively, even if it's an arrogant way of writing. We have all experienced it. Try to see what the reviewer is trying to tell you, because what we see is, actually I had attended a workshop carried out by Wiley in Turkey at our university, and there the person who was presenting said that actually majority of the papers are published in the second journal that they are sent to. So there are a lot of mistakes that are being done on the way. So if you can run away from these, you can shorten the time, shorten the process and the effort you have to put in to get published. Now, on the web, as I have said, you have a lot of planning templates, a lot of webinars, short articles, people share, editors share their experiences. So you can have a template, you should plan for your publication. You should learn about the journal, as the previous speaker said, and you should be aware of all the steps that you have to follow. If we want to summarize the mistakes that you should avoid, what I would say is, like, don't submit to the wrong journals, don't get a desk reject. You may have a good idea, but you can, if you go for the wrong journal, then there is a high probability that you will be rejected. Be sure to follow the submission guidelines. When you write a cover letter, make sure that you don't just write, I'm submitting my paper to you for your consideration, and that's it. You should, I feel like this is like the trailer of your article. It should get the attention of the editor, so the editor would be interested in looking into your paper and to carry forward with it. Also, handle the feedback professionally. When you get reviewer feedbacks, If you don't agree with the reviewers, try to state it politely. And then like when you don't get offended, you know, sometimes I say that our profession is kind of masochist, you know, because we get all these rejections, all these feedback, but take it positively. Take it as something that will basically improve you, your research, and how you write. So if you take it in that way, okay, at first, sometimes, you know, we are humans, so we wouldn't like to be rejected, or we wouldn't, you know, when we get something, we don't like it when someone says, I didn't like this part. But take it positively and take it as something to improve yourself instead of being defensive about it. When you are asked to revise, don't resubmit without revisions. So when you make your revisions, also make a summary of the changes, what you have done when you are resubmitting your paper. If you are rejected, look at the feedback of the reviewers before you submit to another journal. For example, we had one paper with my colleagues, we got rejected, and one of the reviewers were really arrogantly commenting on our paper. And then at first we were defensive, but then when we read it again a week later with my colleagues, we realized that actually, except the tone, what the points he made had value. You know, we said, yes, you know, this is correct. Actually, we missed this. So, you know, take everything constructively and try to see what the reviewer or the editor is trying to convey to you. And don't give up after rejection. Just as I said, try to improve your research, try to get feedback from your colleagues, as well as taking into consideration the reviewers' comments from the previous rejection. Now, be aware of open access publishing and the predatory journals when you send your paper to the predatory journals, because that's sometimes an issue. If you're just, you know, trying to find ways to easily publish your research, then your research may just go into this waste of research, because predatory journals are there just to get the money and they just publish some things. That's something that is quite discussed quite a lot. So be aware of these journals. And open access publishing is getting in the way, and it's something good for sharing knowledge freely. And be aware of these also, these issues. There are a lot of books. There are a lot of also, what I find is there are also a lot of articles nowadays published by editors of different journals or by different researchers in the journals, trying to help the new researchers, or basically researchers. I also learn from them still, and they try to give you some hints. So actually this workshop is one of those, and this is really something very valuable, because when I started doing research, these were not available. You know, we only had our mentors. Mentors are very important, our supervisors at PhD. But now we can also get the views from so many different directions. So try to search, you know, I come across sometimes articles on why you get rejected in a journal. So the editor writes down like the common mistakes that were made by the authors who had submitted to that journal. Or here Professor Brennan wrote about, like, he has 100 research rules that he suggests people to follow to publish in top international journals. This was published in Emerald Insight. And also a lot of online sources and tools are available. The publishers are publishing a lot of, they have author academies, they have author communities that you can, author services that you can subscribe to. You get, you know, emails regarding certain issues about the publishing process. They also give webinars. You can actually enroll, you can get information on that. Also here, Professor Robert Pfaff from University of Queensland Business School, he has a very nice website which is named as Pitching Research, and he has a very good template there. When you first come up with the idea, to structure it in a certain way. So this template helps you actually think of all the points that you should be taking into consideration. So I would strongly recommend that you also check these websites. And I'm sure when you have a question in your mind, like I said, who should be the first author? Should I write this person's name on my paper? Or if you are facing procrastination, how do other researchers come over it? You can find all this information on these websites. And I would recommend that you can also consult these and get a lot of help from them. So I tried not to repeat what the previous speakers said, but what I would say is don't give up. Focus on your strengths, be excited about what you are working on, and don't forget why you publish and research. Thank you.
Thank you, Banu. If you can kindly close your presentation so that we can go back to.
Yes, I will.
Now we move on to Valentin Emilia, who's from Romania, from UAB, Oroville University. We are very proud because we signed an MOU with them a couple of months back, and she was with her rector, Romana here with us. And it was such a pleasure to be welcoming here. I move to Valentin now to make her presentation. Valentin,
yes, I'm
yes.
here.
You there? Yes.
So I observe the time, it's very short. First of all, many thanks for this kind invitation, and it was a great pleasure for us, for me and my rector, in November when we visited you, and we signed with you a memorandum of understanding to start to have more relations and to develop many other projects together. Even we know each other maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So thank you very much, and greetings from my rector. It is true, many things were presented here, and I also prepare some information as I am editor-in-chief for 2 journals in Interscience, and from 2008 I am working on these journals: International Journal of Advanced Intelligence Paradigms, and the other one, International Journal of Computational System Engineering. Both of them are good journals, and only because of time I did not move with the first journal from SCOPUS to ICI. It's strange, but the time it's very short in the last years, and it's a strange story here with the first journal because of my travels in India. Many people wanted to publish in my journal, and nowadays we have more than 400 papers waiting to be published, and I accepted because even I rejected a lot of papers, but the rate of acceptance was about 30%. But even so, we have papers for 5 years in front. It's not okay, because I told to the management, 5 years to wait for a paper means that in 5 years that ideas will be not new, and to start to publish more papers in an issue. So we move from 4 issues to 12 issues per year. Even so, we need a lot of time. I will tell you a few things about my experience in my journals, in other journals, in preparing special issues, books, and so on. And I do not want to repeat the same information like my my friends that were spoken before me. So I want to tell you a few things related to my experience again with India. Going there, I had some experiences that students from IITs came to meet me, maybe traveling 2,000 kilometers just to see me and to ask how to start to write a good paper, but they want to start directly to write in an IEEE transactions because their universities are asking articles like this. So it's very, very hard to explain them if they did not publish first in other journals, how to publish directly in such important journals. Another phenomenon that I saw in India is that they need a lot of publications, students, professors, assistant professors, and so on. So they try every day. They are looking always after articles. And of course, they want to have at least SCOPUS journals. This is not a problem, but another problem is that I explain them. There are many good journals, open access, and universities in India do not accept open access that need to be paid. So without money, this is not a solution because in Europe, very soon we will move to open access, completely open access, and all journals must be paid because this suppose you have a research. To write an article, you need to have a research. This research, this project will support the price of the article. So they must accept such open access journals. It is true, they consider many professors in high-level universities that you are paying for an article. It's not true because Clarivate will drop very fast any journal that is accepting low quality paper. Even they are looking for different particular aspect in publication. If too many self-citation from the journal side is not okay, they will drop immediately. You pay, you not pay is the same. So slowly we will move in that direction. You can see those who are following me, I am very active in publication and I'm trying also to help people. I'm organizing many special issues in ICI, very high factor, low factor, many books. I am responsible to a book series in Elsevier, and I encourage many people to publish. Nowadays, you can see a lot of books. They can be ICI, quotated ICI proceedings, but people, they need journals, ICI journals. So it's not a problem. Their quality papers can be there too, but they need to have their own research. In time, when they are growing, they start to become, I don't know, assistant professor, associate professor, even professor. My advice is to change their research. So you cannot stay your whole life in the same topic. It's impossible because the science is going further with new topic, very hot topic. Just to think to quantum computing, nanotechnologies, even for my side, it was not so easy to change my research topic. Even my topic for my courses, we need to improve them every year. So for research, we need also to move further and to have new topics. I observe also between different publishing houses is like in a war nowadays. So all are looking after publications. Publications everywhere, books, a lot of books, everyone is his own boss and can attract. It's not so easy because if you do not have your own research, you are not a known researcher, not too many people will publish in your book. Even you have a book series, it's not easy. And you need to have your own research. Another aspect that I want to introduce you is that one, that even we are writing papers, we need also to review papers. Some young people, they are thinking that very famous professors are very happy to do a lot of reviews. Is not enough time for us to do this. So I try to explain them. I can do this, but those who are very, very active, like young generation, I am always involving them in reviewing, because just reading and correcting and seeing if there are some problems, sending some suggestions, they can read a lot of literature in their field of in their research interest. So I encourage them to be reviewer, even they are PhD student. In this time, they need to read a lot of things. And before a few years, this activity was not so much appreciated, because you can say, I am reviewer for 10 journals, for of course, ICI journals, or many conferences, and so on. Nobody can collect this data. Nowadays, you have Pablon, and in Pablon, you can have this information related to how many reviews you made for journals, for conferences that are high quotated. It's true. So all these activities, publication, reviewing, we need to do this and to help each other to have their good articles, to have good journals, and they can promote. The whole life we need to struggle to publish, to fight, to grow. And even when we are on top, we must continue. So my mentor was doing this until the end of his life. It's about Professor Lotfizadeh. I was very close to him. I had a lot of communication, emails together, and he continued to publish and to have conferences. Only in 2008, he had more than 60 conferences around the world. So he traveled a lot until he had a lot of problems. We must do the same, not to stop. As my colleague said, that at the moment we are professors, we need to stop. No, it's not correct. We need to continue. And even all activity that we have in front must be introduced in some standards. So we are always asked, in the last few years, let's say 5 years, in the last 3 years, in the last 2 years, how many publications do you have? For your PhD students, you need to be well informed. So we will not stop this activity, publication, research, and reviewing. Thank you very much. I stop here because the time is short, and I congratulate my colleagues for their very interesting presentation. And we are waiting for some questions to see if it's enough time to respond. Thank you very much to Finance India and to Aman Agarwal, to this famous professor with his interesting journal that we have in our library too, and we hope to have in Arad as invited speakers soon. Thank you a lot.
An honor. Thank you very much, Valentin. I will now go to Professor J.D. Agarwal, whom we wanted in the beginning, and request Professor Agarwal to speak. And then we will go to Yamini for a brief while, and I will request her to also, apart from her comments, give a brief, and then we will go to some questions. Although most of my questions have been answered by all, but then I have still one question which I would like to ask all before I open the house. So I will request Professor J.D. Agarwal now to kindly unmute himself, and if he can give his comments.
Namaste to everybody. It's a matter of pleasure for me to be here sharing my views on this subject. It is already 8:30. I wonder whether I should continue. There are two topics in this. One, how to do research and how to publish. It requires really relatively a lot of time to discuss about these two issues. Research, in my opinion, I will only raise a few issues today, and I would suggest the administrator or the organizer, Professor Aman Agarwal, to maybe organize another session as an extension of this session, which can be organized for about 45 minutes or 50 minutes or an hour, where the topic can be dwelled upon. But before I finish, I would certainly raise a few issues. One of the issues I would suggest is, what is research? Research is search of a black cat in a dark room at the dead of the night on an Amavasya night, and which is not there. And during this search, one finds elsewhere a white cat, which becomes a universal truth, because the person concludes searching for that black over a period of time, and then comes out with some conclusions, with some summaries, which becomes universally acceptable, which becomes relevant for the society, which becomes an extension of all the research already done. It is almost like either discarding all what has been done in that area in the past and building up something new, which means like revamping, renovating, destroying all what has been built in the past and reconstructing the whole thing. That's one. Another is adding another brick to the wall, renovating a building, giving it a new shape altogether, where people find, oh, this is something amazing. And I think that has to be done like that. The research could be either fundamental or it could be empirical, which is considered to be based upon evidence and the data. We know, if we see the researches in the past, we find Galileo comes out and says Earth revolves around the sun. It has come out on the basis of some kind of research which he has done. Of course, for this research and the conclusion, he was unfortunately hanged. It is only much later that it was found that the Earth revolves around the sun. Similarly, there are so many researches in physics, in chemistry, in natural sciences, economics, and other areas, accounting and finance, which have been done from time to time. Look at Harry Markovich, who got Nobel Prize. He did some research in 1952. That was something which was both based upon empirical research as well as a fundamental thought. But of course, the research has to emerge from one's brain, a thought process, meditation, where one sits in a room and thinks. Of course, he has to take several steps in that regard. How to do research, I would come at a later stage. Franco Modigliani came out with some research. He talked about the arbitrage process. Capital asset pricing model has been developed in the area of finance. So many others. Entropy measure has been developed, while loss of information by aggregating the financial statements. These are some of the issues which are fundamental in nature. There are so many Nobel Prizes which have been awarded from time to time in the past, in the area of economics and in other areas as well, except of course for mathematics. But if you see, there is something which is unique in each one of those researches where Nobel Prize has been awarded. Now, so what I am trying to say here, I don't want to really detain you too much. I would still suggest that another session may be organized where I can dwell upon how to do research in the perspective and in the relevance of Indian context, and at the same time how to publish and where to publish and what kind of results. But of course, I would certainly say that it all depends upon two factors. Your research is to be based upon your objective, first of all, and it is subject to certain constraints in which you have to work and produce your results. If you do not have either of them, I think the research will be a futile exercise. If it is just for the sake of, cutting and pasting, picking up things from here and there, I think that may not be of much relevance. You have seen very comprehensive, very exhaustive presentations made by the experts who have made presentations today in this webinar. I was very impressed, as a matter of fact. A very well done, very well prepared, very exhaustive, very comprehensive presentations have been made. I must compliment all of them. And I must compliment Professor Aman Agarwal for organizing this webinar. Please do not be disheartened. I am sure I will be able to prevail upon the organizer to organize another session for about an hour on this particular topic, where I can dwell upon how to do research, and secondly, how to publish and where to publish. Thank you very much, because it's already 8:30, very exhaustive in terms of 2.5 hours webinar. I think each one of those participants must be a bit tired, and probably they must be feeling hungry. They had a lot of food for their brain, but they need to have food for their stomach, which is equally important to maintain an excellent health. Stay safe, stay home, and let us fight against corona, produce research and results of those research which are socially relevant for the country, for the nation, for the world, and the discipline in which we will be doing research. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Agarwal. I will go to Yamini. If I will request her again to contain her comment within 5 minutes. I'm sorry to cut down, and as Professor Agarwal said, we will host another session or so and request some of the speakers here if they can join in again. But in any case, we will hold it again for the benefit of people. I will now go to Yamini to kindly make her comments, brief comments, and then also maybe at the end 2 or 3 minutes summarize what others have spoken. Before you summarize, Yamini, I would request if you could give your comments on research and publication.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening to everyone. And,
Yamini, if you don't mind, I have something for people at large, because I thought I should do this piece of information for a long time with me. I must show this. I'll just take a second before we go on. And this was something which was interesting, which came up, and I thought, so my colleagues are here. This was a study done way back in 2004, and Guns and Butters was a center based out in the US, which came out with a study that who should get Nobel Prize. And you will see who all to get the Nobel Prize was here. They listed out a couple of names where Professor J.D. Agarwal's name was also there. That particular Edward Prescott got the Nobel Prize. Eugene Fama has been there. A couple of others. Paul Krugman has got the Nobel Prize. This guy, whoever did this research, based out of the US. This website went offline after the Nobel Prize was announced. But this particular page, fortunately, we were able to download and keep. And you can see Professor Agarwal's name was there, but about 4 of them from this list have got the Nobel Prize in the last 15 years. So this list becomes important from that perspective. So I thought I should bring it up, although Professor Agarwal doesn't like me bringing it up ever. But then I thought I should bring it up for researchers that, you should keep working hard irrespective of where you are, where you base yourself from. It doesn't really make a difference. You can contribute to the growth and development, and that is something which is important. Because many people end up thinking that you get only recognition when you come out of US or UK or Japan or Russia or a specific few countries, but it is not so. Your work gets recognized wherever you are. I now go to Professor Yamini, Dr. Yamini Agarwal, to make her comments and briefly give her comments as well. Yamini, I am putting in spotlight as well as opening you. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Very good evening to everyone again. Well, it is a pleasure to be a part of this international event. The editors and the respective experts who have given such valuable insights into what is research and how to go about doing it, and what you should do and what you should not do while publishing, especially when it takes several years for a researcher or people who are working as professors, as assistant professors or associate professors, to really learn and understand how to really get themselves or their knowledge expressed and published in different refereed journals or index journals. Straight from the editors, we've heard from people who have actually told us extremely valuable insights. One thing I still feel, or happens in a lot of times is when we are about to start a research, people don't know where to begin from. So it's always best to start and looking at different journals and to understand what are the different topics that are being researched presently. So, to begin with, when we guide researchers, we tell them, prepare a bibliography, look into your areas, understand what are the researchers available, what are the different aspects they're talking about. It is possible that you are inquisitive about a particular idea, you're curious about a particular fact, but that probably that fact has already been researched and it has been either discarded or enlightened in the entire field, which can help you promote your idea in a different direction altogether. So when we all begin with research, it's always good to look at the different set of journals and not only concentrate on the top rated journals, but to also concentrate on other journals which may have very relevant topics on which the research has been done. Another important aspect which is necessary as well while one is trying to do research is to see what kind of a particular paper would they like to do. As let's say, a lot of other speakers in the past said that you need to have a systematic approach, you need to have a particular look at the particular audience before you reach out to them. While you're trying to do the research, it's important when you select the journal, one does not begin with selecting the journal and writing a research. So that's not the reverse process it begins. Usually the process is one researches, then one is through his research, then starts looking at the journals. When we are targeting a certain set of journals, which are in refereed journals or index journals, we would like to get our researches published in that manner. And hence it's necessary that we follow their submission guidelines and look at the relevant journals in that particular area in which the research has been done. Another important aspect is to look at the references. Very important aspect of any research is to quote the previous researches in the right manner. Also, when you are quoting in a particular journal, it's necessary that you actually refer some works from there. Also, looking at the editorial board of the journal is an important aspect. Like Professor Bala said, that you must understand what is the role of the editor and what is the role of the associate editor and how do they really look at a particular paper and how do they process it. It's important that you understand who are the editors, from where they come, what kind of a particular perspectives have they been looking at and guiding in the journal and bringing up a higher name or a better name. And hence, one, while glancing through these articles of the journals, can get an idea about that. So again, referencing through that, referencing through the works of the editors, referencing through the works of the people who have published there, that adds on value to it. Another important aspect is while you're publishing, one may or may not refer to the seminal works which have been done in the field, but it is necessary to see that the seminal work, if it has a particular bearing, it is a part and parcel of your research, because a lot of people look at it. Another important aspect which one usually looks at is that whenever a paper is done, usually there is a habit of, using softwares which are there like SPSS, Strata, eViews, whereby, you feed in the data, the output comes in, and you just put it in the paper and, throw it at the editor, which is not a very good thing, because what journals are looking at is what is your inference that you've drawn from the particular data, and how are you going to be utilizing this research in a more socially oriented structure. So that is a few things which I think could be looked at. Now, Professor Bala did speak about that you should look in for a publishable material that is there. You should recognize the roles of the editor and the associate editors. Choose the topic. One important aspect which every editor has said, that go in with your interest. Now, something what happens is one begins with research, one reads through the advanced levels of the journals. They may not be inclined to read more because it's difficult to understand them. So one should not be disheartened. Go on reading the articles, because what happens is slowly and gradually you understand the nitty-gritties and the nuances of the field that is there. So don't get disheartened if you don't understand a particular paper in your field and you find it too advanced. Read another paper, look at the references that are there. Go back to the references, read those references, and you will understand what is the author talking about. Again, peer review is a very important aspect which Professor Bala did say before submitting should be done. Question and answer what you want to submit. Do not align your paper in a chronological order. Again, definitely do not give up. Do not ignore the referee's comments which are there. Rewrite, readdress all the points that are necessary. And important aspect is publicize your research. What Professor Lynn also clearly said that, one should have an audience that is there. Choose the journal according to the audience. Stick to the particular formats that the particular journal follows. Look for special interest groups who can read your work, who can assess your work, understand your work, give you right comments, give you direction, enlighten you about things. Get citations through social networks. Well, Professor Junzo, on the other hand, did talk about looking at the journal's impact factor, indexing factor, trying to follow a systematic procedure while you're publishing it, getting more scientific in your approach and writing what you want to work on, technically answering questions that are needed to be answered in a research process, guiding yourself through the research process. Professor Giovanni beautifully said that one should again have interest. So, all editors have said the interest should, when you say interest, it should not be only in your reading something, but when you write, it should engrip the other person to read through and go through your paper. So maybe your results are important, maybe a particular question is important. What you're really researching may draw the editor towards your paper. Again, mentoring is what Professor Giovanni clearly said was a very good thing. That means you should have a guide. If you don't have a guide, you don't have somebody, your senior colleagues or people who are publishing as editors in different journals, read their works. Even when they can't give you the time, the articles that they write can help you mentor yourself and develop a writing skill for yourself. Again, write new papers if the previous paper is not really working well for you or it has not done well for you. Consider close competitions that are there, as Professor Giovanni said, and try to take them in a positive light in developing yourself. One very beautiful thing he said that people are the economists are self-centered. Well, it is true, and a lot of young people feel that their ideas may be stolen, but then the world is wide, and any fraction of fact that something can be stolen today makes people fear that they may lose their respect in the social lives. So people don't really do that kind of a thing. Professor Banu beautifully put together an entire presentation which was on what you should do, why you should publish, what is the real guiding and a motivating force which should lead you to publish, how you should clearly be aware of what kind of plagiarisms that are there, how the plagiarisms should be avoided, be more systematic in your approach, avoid mistakes that are there, look into the templates and various websites which guide you through the research process, and also have your own voice in the research process that you're doing, because it is what you are voicing is what is important as a contribution to your research. Professor Balas actually, Emilia said that again, do not run for the top journal at the beginning itself, which we all are ambitious and we all feel that we are meant for the top-notch journals. We're not meant for any other journal, and hence the first thing that we should do is we should target the top-notch journal. Writing in a top-notch journal, yes, is a gradual process which should be learned slowly. Your first writing can make it to the top-notch journal. It is not like it cannot make it, but one should always begin with slow steps and a gradual step process that is there. Again, journals are receiving large publications. There's a huge amount of competition that is there. Journals have increased their periodicity, and thereby so you do understand that the peer groups are extremely competitive. Professor J.D. Agarwal clearly brought about the essence of research, what he said that when you're trying to do research, there is no right way or wrong way. It is something that you're doing in the dark, trying to find something, and if you find it, it may be extremely different than what you were expecting it. So don't expect your results to be guided with what you were looking for, but do find out your results and then guide through your workings that are there. And you do not know which person whose research will make it to the next Nobel Prize or would make it a universal law, which may actually be something that everybody would use for their advantage tomorrow. So it was a great insight, a valuable insight, which we received from the August gathering, which I think any person should feel extremely grateful for, because these are valuable lessons which nobody would have really got until they have slogged their life for years to understand what writing is and how publishing goes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yamini, for that brief up. I do have one question. I know the time is out, but I will request any one of you who wants to answer this question, because although Professor Agarwal did mention about it, but I thought it is important. Junzo, I will take up your presentation in the next session. I'll give you a full half-hour slot to give you the whole presentation. But this question which I wanted to respond is that, does research need to have social relevance, or mere empirical work and finding and doing theoretical modeling is sufficient to go forward? I would request, maybe if I can go one by one, if you mute yourself, if Bala can respond, and then Bala?
And everything has a social relevance. Yeah. I think there's a physical relevance to research. One can, so I think any kind of, anything that you're bringing up new is valuable. We don't know what is valuable today. Anything you take, the portfolio theory became so important. But at that time, when they did, I don't know whether that is what was practiced. So it becomes socially relevant. If you take physics, for example, was it relevant? Many of the theories, many of the mathematics that they came up with, but maybe someday it will become. We don't know. So I think the demand that it should have a social relevance today for research is not very worthwhile, and I will not go for it.
Thank you, Bala. If Giovanni would like to say a few words.
Yes, finance is applied economics, so the interplay of theory and empirical research is very important. Lately, it has also become increasingly important to examine socially relevant questions. But that depends in some measure on the particular specialization. Some areas are still more abstract than other ones, at least as far as the immediate social issues are concerned. It is still quite important in general to be able to apply finance, but sometimes the applications are a bit removed from the feelings of ordinary people. For example, some of the largest models have done about the clearing of derivatives in over-the-counter markets. Is not something clearly which has the same impact of increasing or decreasing inequality for the main media. But I think it's also very important, you know, in a way it is, if you like, the plumbing of our economy. Of course, the architect gets more visibility than the plumber, but you need pipes in a house as well as a nice architectural design. So I think that in general, if you look for notoriety, especially when you're young, it's important to address some topics people can easily relate with. But in general, all the investment process we're trying to model in finance, both for individuals and firms, is quite important for our society.
Thank you, Giovanni. If I can have Lynn Martin, I see she was a little off for a second, but she's back here. Lynn Martin, if you can respond to the social relevance of research. Yeah.
I think it's part of your task as a writer to look at social relevance in your paper, but also in the way you convey its relevance, in the impact it has after it's been published. And that's by identifying the key messages of the article and carefully targeting them to meet the needs of different audiences. I conducted a large-scale research project funded by Amazon last year, and the messages there, were about identity, power, leadership. So the papers coming from that are obviously academic, but the underlying meaning, the way it can help people, needs to be conveyed in more everyday English and, through activities targeting female leaders, people who run companies, HR directors, etc. So it's really about, and I'd be bound to say this really is a marketing and entrepreneurship person, it's really about carefully looking at who your audience are and who might benefit from it and letting them know what it is.
Yes, thank you, Lynn, for that insight. I will request Banu if she has something to talk about it as well.
I think everyone said what can be said, but I would go back to my quote from Aristotle, if our research does not have social relevance, then it can be futile. To be able to have a fruitful research, it should, all research has, I think, social relevance, but how we put it, as Lynn really put it very greatly, if we can convey it, then it is there. And to be able to do that, we should be aware of the social relevance of our research. That's why I go back to this issue where we have to answer the question, why do we do this research on this topic, and why do we want it to be conveyed to the other people, to our audience?
Thank you, Banu. Can we have Junzo Watada, if he can also highlight on this issue? Because I have these people from different disciplines completely coming here with us. Junzo, if you're still around.
Okay, shortly, my concerned journals are the computing science and information sciences. but quite wide ranges. The journals can accept various topics. And recently I joined the SSCI Q&A journal on intellectual properties. I think many papers can be acceptable. Also, not only intellectual, relating to intellectual properties, history and industry, and also engineering and science are relating to. We would like to accept such a wide range papers, so the audience can submit their result to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Junso. If I can now bring in Valentini, if we can make your comment as well, please. Valentine, if you're still there, I do see, just a second, I'll unmute you, sorry.
So only few words. So I consider very, very important this social relevance. Just thinking nowadays to coronavirus, so a lot of research is conducted in that direction. I am speaking about me, it's not nice, but just now I have 2 special issues in high impact factor journals and maybe 6 books. So we have a topic and we need to do research in this direction because it's for benefit of society. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I request Professor J.D. Agarwal, although he did hint on it, but if he has some last words to say. We have some people who want to ask questions, but given the time frame and we have crossed over by 1 hour, we will be restricting that today. But as I said, we will organize this again and we will take up these questions. Any one of you has questions can put up these questions in the groups or email us. We will request the editors to respond to them and then we can send them to you. But I'll just go to Professor J.D. Agarwal if he has some last comments to make, and then I'll close the session for today. Yeah, Professor J.D. Agarwal, if he's still there. Okay, so we would, in any case, we are not able to hear him. We would, just a second. Professor Agarwal, if you're still there, if you can respond, if you can talk about the social relevance of research. Can you hear me? Professor J.D. Agarwal? Okay, we would then go with the end of the session, and I would like to thank everyone who has joined us today from all over the world who have joined us. And as I said, we will be looking at your help and support going forward later in life in terms of organizing these webinars for people to join. We are happy that people have taken out. Some of you could not join, like Sardar could not join and Bharat could not join us today, but then we will look at them coming in the next thing. The Institute, just as a last formality, we have been doing a lot of research work. Some of them are very clear about it. We're very happy that we've had a lot of people talk about these and bring it up before us, and we have the support of all these editors and others who have helped us. I thought I'll just run this small presentation, which I was given as a task by our admin to do as a part of the presentation at the end of the session. So I thought I will do this. This is something about the programs which we offer at the Institute, and the 3 institutions we have, the IIF Business School and the IIF College of Commerce. And then the Journal of Finance India. I'm very happy to say some of our path-breaking work has actually found place in terms of the research which we do. Just a second, please. Sorry, I think there's something wrong, but in any case, I thought I should bring up these issues about what we have done in terms of research. The journal, as has been talked about, has been there. I would like to now thank everybody and bring the conference to an end. Thank you everyone, all the participants, all the speakers for your time, for your valuable inputs. And we would be holding some sessions. We have another series sessions on the virus of, the life with Corona, which is going to be there on the 4th. And then we have some webinars which we are hosting on the essence of life and growth, which is going to be held every 3 days in a week. I thought I should brief you about that. And I just wanted to show that to you in the presentation so that you are aware. We are then holding a large number of other seminars and webinars, which we are doing during the lockdown, but we will continue to do some of them even after the lockdown. And they are focusing on different issues which are there for us, relevant for people at large. I thought I should share this basic information, and so that everyone is aware of it. We would be continuing with this series. Thank you very much. Namaskar and Vande Mataram. Have a nice day. Good night. Good night, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.